Welcome back all. Today I'm going to be looking at The Perfect Pencil, a game that thrusts you into a surreal hand-drawn kingdom where nothing is quite as it seems. Released on January the 29th, 2026 on Nintendo Switch as the first game developed from the Italian Studio Cima. This indie 2D action platformer blends platforming, exploration, and psychological storytelling into a unique metroidvania-leaning experience. As you guide John, a young man confronting the symbolic fears within his own psyche, the game invites you to explore hidden lore, face unsettling boss battles, and carve your path out of darkness and uncertainty. So, does The Perfect Pencil sketch out something truly special, or is it destined to be erased and forgotten? Let's have a look, shall we? The Perfect Pencil's narrative is far from traditional, and one of personal growth, fear, and introspection. It takes place in the Kingdom of the White Beast, a bizarre illustrated world where you awaken without clear direction, and it soon becomes apparent that this strange place reflects deeper elements of John's mind. As you traverse its contours, the story unfolds through interactions with peculiar characters, optional encounters, and a lore-rich environment designed for discerning, curious minds. Unlike linear tales that spell out every beat, The Perfect Pencil's narrative thrives on visual and thematic symbolism, encouraging you to interpret the meaning of each strange encounter and choice. The world's psychological themes are reinforced not just through dialogue, but through the grotesque, yet evocative character designs you face that personify these struggles, all in addition with the weird and wonderful environments that shift around you. And it's this approach that lends the narrative intimacy and emotional weight, avoiding the blunt exposition you come to expect from the genre. The storytelling is heavily diegetic. Your camera head allows you to scan NPCs and objects to uncover hidden layers of lore, and the game features a branching narrative. Your choices in dialogue aren't just flavor text, they can permanently alter your perspectives, special items that provide passive bonuses but often come with psychological malice or drawback. It's a unique but hauntingly beautiful experience that forces you to confront the very fears that it portrays. Mechanically, The Perfect Pencil is a challenging 2D action platformer that demands patience and deliberate timing. The combat is primarily melee focused, utilising John's pencil sword to strike down the grotesque, hostile manifestations that haunt the mindscape, and they really are surreal. Rather than following the modern trend of floaty, hyper-responsive movement, the game leans in to a slightly heavier feel with real weight to movement and strikes. You can attack in 4 directions and even perform a downward strike to bounce off enemies, a move fans of the genre may find familiar. John's analysis ability adds nuance to the exploration and the storytelling. By scanning NPCs, objects, and environmental details, you unlock hidden information and lore, encouraging thorough exploration, and I really did welcome this. It's a simple approach that creates a sense of discovery and immersion, something that's often overlooked, but it is huge for giving narrative weight to every corner of this mindscape. To some extent here, you could liken it to Hollow Knight and Celeste on the surface, particularly in the world layering and challenge pacing, just with a little more narrative focus and less punishing difficulty overall. But on this point, I will add that at times there are certain boss encounters that can feel uneven in difficulty, but the mix of exploration, choice, and platforming generally feel well balanced. But the true star of the system is the healing loop, which serves as a high-stakes gamble in every skirmish. Unlike most games where you passively find health potions or retreat to safety, here you must go on the offensive to survive. Attacking enemies fills your courage meter, but once full, you don't just press a button to heal. Instead, you have to hold a specific input to charge a healing strike and then successfully land a heavy, slow-moving blow on an active enemy to recover your willpower. This creates a tense risk-reward dynamic where being at low health forces you to dive back into the fray, turning every desperate encounter into a frantic struggle for sustainment, and I really enjoyed this far more than I thought I would. Although it does feel a little counterintuitive at first, it becomes thoroughly intriguing. And this tension extends directly into the world's non-linear exploration. The map is a sprawling, connected labyrinth of hand-drawn environments like the soft forest and the hotel, filled with the ability-gated shortcuts and secret-laden corridors you'd expect from a top-tier metroidvania. However, the game pushes back against the player by spacing its save points notoriously far apart. Every new room becomes a gamble of whether to push forward or retreat with your collectibles. While the platforming and movement is generally precise, I did find the stiff jump arc a little bit punishing. Much like the classic Castlevania titles, you have limited air control once committing to a leap, meaning you have to be very deliberate with your positioning to avoid falling back into a bizarre, psychological trap lurking below. This can at times lead to frustration, but you quickly adapt to it, and after a few hours, I can't really remember myself thinking about it. Personally, I think the visuals are beautiful. The Perfect Pencil leans heavily into hand-drawn, surreal environments that feel layered rather than flat. Backgrounds are packed with detail, using foreground elements, drifting particles, and subtle environmental animation to give scenes a real sense of depth. While it's not loudly advertised as a parallax showcase, the way different layers move and breathe creates that same illusion of space, making the world feel larger and more alive. It's a style that complements the game's dreamlike tone, pulling you into its strange spaces without ever distracting you from the platforming itself. Two words I've used a few times keep springing to mind, and they are beautiful and surreal. Technically, your experience with the Perfect Pencil would depend heavily on your hardware. On the original Switch, the game runs at a native 720p handheld and 1080 docked, with dynamic resolution doing some heavy lifting during the more complex animations. It targets 30 frames per second, and for the vast majority of the experience, it's consistent. However, at 30 frames per second, there are times when the melee combat feels even heavier than intended, and the frequent use of screen shake can occasionally make the action look a bit choppy during the more chaotic, particle-heavy boss encounters. But for the most part, it looks, plays, and feels solid. However, the game truly finds its rhythm on the Nintendo Switch 2. It runs at a locked 60 frames per second with a 1440 docked resolution. This isn't just a visual upgrade. The jump to 60 frames makes the game's critical healing strike timing feel significantly more responsive and fair. On both systems, you're looking at impressively fast load times of just 2 to 3 seconds. But if you have the choice, the Switch 2's added horsepower eliminates the slight softness of the hand-drawn art and provides the precision this challenging Metroidvania demands, and it really is beautiful. I would like to quickly point out that there is frequent use of high contrast, bright flashes and strobe-like effects during story sequences and the combat. If you are photosensitive or triggered by light patterns, you should exercise a little caution, or perhaps just skip this one entirely, as there are currently no toggles in the settings to disable this. I did find myself getting a bit of a headache while playing handheld after an hour or so, but I did slowly get used to it. Combined with environmental sound cues, subtle steps, enemy audio tells, atmospheric ambience, the audio design supports immersion, really allowing the exploration to feel thoughtful rather than chaotic. But on the whole, the audio in the Perfect Pencil is a masterclass in psychological atmosphere, favouring a sinister, reactive soundscape over traditional melodies. It frequently utilises eerie, minimalist tracks that shift to reflect the protagonist's internal state, often punctuated by deliberate stretches of silence that heighten the tension. These quiet moments make the diegetic sound effects, like the visceral pencil-on-paper scratch of your attacks, feel significantly more impactful. And beyond the mood, the sound design serves as a vital mechanical tool. Your exploration radar uses spatial audio cues, increasing in frequency to lead you toward hidden objects. While the game lacks full voice acting, the distorted, guttural vocalizations of the NPCs perfectly complement the dreamlike world, making the audio a key pillar of this experience. So, what are we talking price-wise? It comes in at a 2.1GB download and is priced on the eShop for £22.99 or €24.99. However, if you are from North America, there is currently a 20% pre-order discount running until February the 6th. Hopefully, I get this video out just before then. This discount knocks it down from $24.99 US to a very reasonable $19.99, and in Canada, you can currently pick it up for $26 flat, down from $32.50. In a world of $80 releases and $60 re-releases, I think that this is a brilliant price for an excellent indie gem, and for any mega metroidvania fans, it's an absolute bargain. It took me just over 15 hours to complete, and besides the minor pacing issues, it was a blast. Unfortunately though, there are currently no plans for a physical version or a Switch 2 update, but the beefier Switch 2 hardware definitely improves the experience significantly. The Perfect Pencil is a thoughtful, evocative metroidvania that uses its surreal world and psychological themes to create an experience that feels both personal and imaginative. Its blend of exploration, narrative depth and platforming keeps you engaged, but constantly curious about what is to come. And its hand-drawn aesthetic makes it one of the more visually distinctive indie titles on the Switch in early 26, and it really is quite striking. It may not dethrone the heavyweights of the genre, but it definitely competes, and most certainly thrives in its own niche, especially for players who appreciate narrative exploration and psychological depth, whether it's the analysis ability revealing hidden meanings, or the way each encounter feels connected to the protagonist's inner journey. This game is much more than it initially appears. The combat is more about impact and precision over speed and chaos, and the world building stands out among its peers. One of the biggest compliments I can pay this game is that I am not the biggest fan of Metroidvanias, but having worked my way through this and sat down to contemplate the experience, it has made me rethink my stance and has given me the desire to replay all of the games I have passed on or stopped partway through. It really has reinvigorated my desire to dive deeper into the genre, and for that, I'm grateful, less so for the backlog. The minor FPS fluctuations on Switch 1 can occasionally be bothersome, and the genre staple of having to backtrack after deaths and to hand quests in at times can be a pain. And if you really want to nitpick, the stiff jump may not be for you. But overall, I had an amazing time with the Perfect Pencil, and I cannot recommend it enough.